Andoni Iraola's identity at Bournemouth felt relentless and specific. Liverpool, on the other hand, have just come off a season where their identity completely fell apart. So as Iraola takes charge of one of English football's grandest clubs, the obvious question is this: what will his football actually look like at Anfield? It's hard to overstate how far Iraola took Bournemouth across 3 seasons. When he arrived at the Vitality Stadium in the summer of 2023, the club was fresh off a relegation battle. By his final campaign, Bournemouth had finished 6th, secured a first-ever European qualification, and gone unbeaten for 18 matches along the way. Their identity was built on a layered pressing structure, starting in an organized zonal shape, then shifting into tight man-to-man marking the moment the ball moved wide, paired with a flexible setup that could turn into an attacking 5 across the front line whenever they had possession, with fullbacks pushing forward and a midfielder dropping into the back line to cover. And the assumption has been that Iraola will simply move this system, players and all, straight onto a Liverpool squad that was built for something completely different. But the reality is a bit more complicated. Even at Bournemouth, Iraola's approach kept adjusting to fit his personnel. When key players left the club, he didn't try to rebuild the exact same setup piece for piece. He found different ways to protect the same core ideas, leaning more on his center backs stepping out of the defensive line and on sustained work rate to cover the space that created. Bournemouth led the league in ball recoveries under him, not because the shape stayed fixed, but because the underlying demand, win the ball back quickly, high up the pitch, never changed. That kind of adaptability could matter a great deal at Liverpool. Managers who've arrived at Anfield with a single fixed blueprint have often found the job unforgiving the moment results dip. Jurgen Klopp, by contrast, spent 9 years there largely because his pressing principles could bend around whoever he had available, moving from an early counter-attacking style to a more patient, possession-based team by the end of his time. Iraola has already hinted he understands this same lesson. Speaking after his appointment, he said that Liverpool didn't need convincing. The club simply is what it is. It's a comment about the institution rather than the tactics, but it points to a manager who knows he's stepping into something bigger than any single system. And the reason Iraola can afford to stay flexible on shape is because what actually matters most to him sits underneath the formation: intensity, distance covered, and duels won. Under him, Bournemouth consistently led the league for distance covered per match. And it's here that Iraola faces his biggest task at Anfield, because this is exactly what Liverpool lost. In Arne Slot's title-winning first season, Liverpool had one of the best defensive records in the league. A year later, they were conceding at close to 1.5 goals per game, shipping 27 goals in just 18 matches during one stretch, a run that put them among the weakest defensive teams anywhere in Europe's top divisions at that point. The champions fell to 5th place, and Slot was let go before the following season began. The decline wasn't really about one poor signing or a run of bad luck. It traced back to the team's pressing simply switching off. The intensity that had overwhelmed opponents a year earlier disappeared, and the forwards brought in to replace departing attackers didn't bring the same defensive contribution. That left the center backs exposed and the midfield without its usual protection. This isn't only a forward line issue either. Salah has never pretended to be a defensive winger, and that trade-off was manageable when the rest of the team pressed with full commitment. Once that collective effort dropped off, his freedom further forward turned from an accepted cost into a real structural problem. Van Dijk, now in the later stages of his career, was being asked to cover more ground than ever, with far less protection in front of him. So it's clearly here that Iraola faces his defining challenge. At Bournemouth, he had a squad of hungry, less established players who committed to 90 minutes of hard running because the alternative was mid-table obscurity. At Liverpool, he inherits genuine stars, some of them league champions, some of them among the best players in the world at their position, and he needs all of them to track back and press with the same level of effort as a squad that had far less to lose. Whether Anfield's biggest names are willing to run the way Bournemouth's players did may end up defining his entire time in charge. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe for more tactical previews as the new season approaches, including a look at how every newly appointed manager in the league is likely to set their team up.